Okay, yesterday we taught you the beginning of sequences, and I just want to do a review question for you on that. Let's say that we had this sequence 2, and I'm going to times it by 3, and I get 6, times it by 3, and I get 18, dot, dot, dot. Can you write me the little formula starting with a u sub 1? I've told you later we're going to start with other u subs, but for right now, u sub 1, and then write me the rest of the formula. I'm going to pair you with somebody, and you're going to compare yours with theirs. Pausing for a second. So, some basic elements of this. Hopefully you knew that this is the starting number. Starting number was 2. And then u sub n is equal to u sub n minus 1. What that means is a random term and the term right in front of it. So a random term is given by the term right in front of it times by 3. And the only thing we're going to do different today, really, is we're going to focus in on this kind, the geometric kind. The other kind was called what? Start with an A. Arithmetic. That's the kind where you would have added 3 each time, and then this would be 6 plus 3 would have been 9, and you'd go plus 3 every time. 2 plus 3, wait a minute. 2 plus 3 would have been 5, and then plus 3 would have been 8. Anyway, that kind, the adding kind, isn't used near as often as the multiplying kind. So this multiplying kind, the geometric kind, we're going to start having you do this in a parentheses, and we're going to do more complicated stuff in here. That's really all we're doing today. It's just stepping up a notch on the geometric kind and making them a little more complicated. All right? So let me show you one. Here's the one that's been stepped up. U1 equals 100,000. Un equals un minus 1. All stay the same there. And then we're going to times by, and instead of going just a simple number, we're going to just make it a 1 plus something or a 1 minus something. Why does that make it any different? Well, it's still a common ratio, it's called. This number, this whole thing is called the common ratio. This part right there is called the growth rate. And if that's a minus, if it's a plus, it's growth. If it's a minus, what do you think it's called? Decay. And it still has that little domain at the end. N is greater than or equal to, and it's always 1 bigger than that number. So 2 in this case. That's the little domain that says basically this formula doesn't work for u sub 1. It only works for the n numbers. Also get this straight in your head. Those n's, those are these numbers on the bottom. Whenever they're talking about an n, they're talking about which term it is. Because we don't change variables. We don't go like A, B, C, D. We use u's the whole time. The n's are these numbers down here. So if they say n is bigger than or equal to 2, they're saying the little number down here has to be 2 or bigger, or this formula won't work. So in other words, it can't predict the first one. That's what this means. All right, so I'm going to give you another one. U1 equals 20. Un equals un minus 1. And this time I'm going to say 1 minus 0.3. Now, I'd like you to figure out, is that growth or decay? Write that down. Does this have a common ratio or a common difference? Write that down. And then, what is the growth or decay rate? So you might think, okay, this is a, how did I put a D? Geometric, oh yeah, growth or decay. Sorry. Okay. You could put a G for growth, and then you could say it's a CR, and then you could say its decay rate was, 0.7 or something, whatever you think. Give me those 3 answers. Then turn and show the kids diagonal from you and see if they said the same thing. I think the one people are going to get wrong the most is the common ratio. What is the common ratio? That's the question. All right. So would you agree that this thing is decaying? Because the negative in here. Here's another way to think of that. What is 1 minus 0.3? 0.7. So if I'm going to be timesing by 0.7, do you get it's going to get smaller? Times by 0.7? All right. So if this is decay, first of all, is it a common ratio, common difference? That's kind of a trick question because this one's geometric, and it can't have a common difference. It has to be a common ratio. Okay. And then the last part is growth or decay. Well, we talked about its decay, but what is the rate? The rate of decay would be 0.3, also known as 30% decay. And what is the common ratio? And it's not ever the same as the decay rate. The common ratio is not 0.3, not 30%. What's the common ratio? 0.7. Common ratio is 0.7. It's this whole thing is the common ratio. That right there is the decay or growth rate. In this case, it's decay because of the minus rate. Okay, so here's another scenario. I give you some numbers. It starts with 2, and then it goes down to 1.75, and then it goes down to something else, etc. And I'll tell you, this is not a subtracting one. This is a geometric. As soon as I say it's geometric, you know it's got to be multiplied by something. So it's got a common ratio. So you're going to take a ratio to get my common ratio. I'd like you to write me the formula for this one. Since I told you it's geometric, you know it's a multiply by some decimal. It's a geo. So what's the formula? Well, U1 equals blah, blah, blah. Write the whole formula out. See if you get the same thing as they did. Okay, turn and show the person next to you. And if you're not like sure, it's okay to say I'm not sure what's going on. You know, just see if you and they have the same thing. If you need some help, ask. All right, just to clarify some stuff, did you agree that you should have taken 1.75 divided by 2 at some point? How many of you guys did that? Okay, good. That's how you get the common ratio. Okay, so that should have been some decimal. What decimal was it, by the way? 0.875. Okay, so if this comes out to 0.875, that is the common ratio. That's the number you multiply by every time. Times by 0.875, and you get this. And then you times by 0.875, and you'll get the next number, etc. Okay? So then our formula goes u sub 1 equals 2, u sub n minus 1. And all you had to decide was what to put in there. Should I put 1 plus something? Nope. Because if I do 1 plus 0.875, it's going to grow. You know what I mean? If I put 1 plus this, that's going to make it grow every time. Do you get that this number here, if it's bigger than 1, it's going to make it grow? I don't want it to grow. What do I do? I can't put 0.875 in there. Oh, I guess I could. But do you remember me saying that this answer here is going to be always a little more complicated? All right, so 0.875 was a right answer to put there. Okay, how many of you had that in your formula? I had 0.875. Okay, good. That's most of you. Then All I would ask you to do different is instead of just getting this answer and putting it here, I would ask you to turn it into a 1 plus something or a 1 minus something. Okay, so this 0.875, I can make that into a 1 minus, and then I just have to like subtract 1 in my head, or you can use a calculator if you wanted to. Remember, you can use a calculator this whole time, so if you want to, grab it. 1 minus 0.875, what is it? 0.125. All right. Do you get then that 0.875 is the right thing? Why is this any better? Because it tells me the decay rate. The decay rate is not 0.875. This is the decay rate. Okay? All right, let's do another one like that. So I'm going to make it simpler because I feel like I'm blowing some people away. 10, 8, dot, dot, dot. And again, I am not subtracting 2 here. This is a geometric, which means it's multiplied by some decimal. Would you please figure out the formula? And this time, I'm going to start it. This isn't the problem. Right in there, I would like you to figure out what to put there that goes like this. 1, and clearly it's going down, minus something. That's how I want you to write the formula. Then the 2 hard questions would be, once you got the formula written, what is the common ratio? And what is the decay rate? They are 2 different numbers. They're kind of related to each other, but they're different. Would you please check and see in a moment if you have the same formula as them and the same common ratio and the same decay rate? Okay, check. Okay, for those of you following along at home, they have checked each other, and I think they're right. And when you take this divided by this, it's 8/10, and that is 0.8. And the only mistake you could have made is just to write 1 minus 0.8. That wouldn't work. 1 minus what? 0.2. Do you get how it's not going down by 80%? It's going down by 20%. From 10 down to 8 is a 20% drop, not an 80% drop. So then, what is the common ratio? It's this whole thing, which is 0.8. What is the decay rate? 0.2. Raise your hand if you had that perfect. Awesome. Then I feel like we have mastery and we can, that's basically the whole lesson for today. But we're going to still make sure we review some of the terms and things. I asked you before to be eventually kind of migrating towards this. If you haven't already got here, find it quickly, please. It's Unit 9, Lesson 2. It's in the same folder as yesterday, just, you know, one notch down, day 2 of it. We're going to do a lot of calculator stuff and how to put that stuff we just did into a calculator. All right. So everybody, let's start with the calculator. Everybody, would you clear the memory in your calculator? And let me show you how. This is just to make sure that there's nothing weird. It clears all the settings and makes it like factory new. I won't wipe any apps you have, but they come from the manufacturer, but it would wipe the programs that you have. If you are a programmer and you got programs on your calculator you want to save, then just tell me and I'll get you one of my calculators. But if you're not a programmer and you don't even know what I'm talking about, then you can wipe your calculator. Right? Here's what you do. Second key, which is the upper left, and then 7, and then 1, and then 2. No, wait, I screwed up. Start over, clear, quit. It's second plus key 7, 1, and then 2. Okay, now everybody go to the mode button. We're going to get it in the right mode. The normal mode you're used to, and the mode it is in right now, if you just reset it, it's in function mode. But we don't want to do functions today. We're doing sequences. This is a whole new mode you've probably never been in before. So go to over to SEQ, sequence mode, and you hit enter on that, and it'll put you into sequence mode. Now, how do you even be able to tell the difference? Hit your Y equals button and see how different it looks now. All right, so it's totally changed your calculator and how it thinks. Now, let me show you how to do this next part. First thing is, it's not as intimidating if you realize that only the top 3 lines really matter. These are if you wanted to do more than one function at once. We're just going to do the U function. But you could have like 3 sequences in here in your calculator at the same time. We don't need these bottom ones, so just ignore those. So it's really only the top 3 lines. Now, I think you should get this. Well, first of all, would you please compare your screen to the person that's diagonal from you? Make sure they're in the right spot, because if somebody hit the wrong buttons and they're lost, make sure that they're in the sequence mode so that their Y equals are not there. It should say N min at the top. You're probably not going to with that calculator. Okay, you get it within 5 minutes and you're good. Otherwise, no, you're going to be so lost. This is sitting up here waiting for you if you can't find sequence mode. All right. So, ready? So, if you need to learn how to read what it's asking you here. The first question is N min. Now, I could just tell you what to put there, but I need you to understand it. N min means what's the minimum, which means smallest. N. Remember the N's are the little sub numbers? So if we're going to put in a formula, which we're going to put in this one right here, U1 equals 6, I already know what the smallest term is I'm ever going to use. My N min, my N smallest, my smallest N is that. Do you get how since we're starting with U sub 1, our smallest N is 1? That's why we have a 1 there, okay? And that is what your calculator defaulted to. Now, when we get to the more complicated problems, like the real world problems we're going to do tomorrow, then we're going to change that to U sub 0. But for right now, we can leave that as a 1. Okay. Do you get that your calculator cannot do subscripts? And therefore, since it can't do subscripts, it has to say parentheses for sub. So on the second line there, do you see how it has U sub n? Do you get that's what it's trying to say to you? And where do we have that in our formula? We always have that next. U sub n is U sub n minus 1 times, and I was telling you how we're going to always put it in parentheses now. That's why. Okay, so now what do we type here? We already have the U sub n, so we got to type in U sub n minus 1. All right, how do I do that? Above the 7 is the U. U. Now sub, that's in parentheses. N minus 1. N minus 1. End the parentheses. There. I just said U sub n is equal to U sub n minus 1. And now I got to tell it what the common ratio, the common difference is. Okay? This one, I'm having it grow by 1.75. See? It's at the bottom of your notes there. Okay, so I'm going to put in, instead of just times 1.75, I'm going to put in times. Remember how I said to put it in parentheses? And I said to always put it as a 1 plus or 1 minus something. So I want you to put in 1 plus 0.75. Now I understand it's extra keystroke, but understand why. It's because that shows me it's 75% growth. The common ratio is 1.75, but it's 75% growth. All right, take a moment, make sure that your person's in the right spot. It's partially your job to make sure that they're doing it right. If they're lost, you got to help them. Matt, did I hook you up with anybody? Oh, okay. All right. Have you guys compared? Okay, good. Okay. Hopefully, you got that part done. Now, just think for a second. What, besides the domain, which, by the way, we do not have to tell the calculator the domain, it's smart enough to know that automatically, so that's nice, we don't have to type in the domain. What haven't we told it yet? We've told it to multiply by 1.75 every time. We've told it we're going to start with use of 1, the smallest number in our sequence, which is 6. So everybody put the 6 right there. And why should we put a 6 there? It says u sub n min. Well, if you refer back to earlier, n min is 1. So really it's asking you u sub 1. Do you get that? It's just logic. N min is 1. So this really is a 1. I wish it would just transfer that down for us, but they don't. U sub 1 is 6. And that's exactly what it says on the top row right there. All right, so we put this in the calculator. It starts with 6. It goes up by 1.75 every time. Does it add 1.75? No, it multiplies. So it's geometric. All right, now the cool part is, of course, with the calculator, it can calculate things really fast. So if we want to know what the 40th term is, we can get it super fast. We don't have to hit enter 40 times or anything. There's a smart way to do this. So right now, everybody go to your table. Go to second table. Do you get how u sub 1 is 6, and u sub 2 is 10.5, and u sub 3 is 18.375, etc.? Yes. All right, then you did something wrong. Go down to Go To and hit Enter. And now what did it land on? It tells you where the error was. Okay, it's saying that you put something in down here. All right. Where did it jump to when it said the error? Because you already moved it. Okay, here, just do it again. Go to Table. And now we go to Go To, and it's going to jump to where the error is. It's saying that's a problem. All right, so inside there is a problem. It's because you used a -1 instead of a -1. So it jumps the cursor to right near where your problem is. Okay, did anybody else calculator's error out? All right. If yours errored out, did you use a -1 or a -1? Make sure you use the minus key, not the negative key. That usually fixes it. But otherwise, if your calculator is not working right, what I want you to do is, your partner is there for a reason. I want you to put your calculator side by side with theirs, and always the error is under the y equals screen. Compare your y equals screen to theirs. And if there's anything different, the tiniest thing, I had 3 people that were messed up. We're trying to get them fixed. You're still working? Yours working or not? All right. Pausing. Okay, now we're going to change it to decay of 30% and find the 10th term. Okay, compare with your partner. Make sure you got the same thing as they did on u sub 10. The 10th line. If you're lost, don't just say I'm lost. Get help from them. Yes, sir. Okay, so hopefully you changed that to 1 minus, because it was decay rate, 1 minus 0.3. 0.3. Oh, actually, if I want to have a 5 there. There we go. You didn't have to have the 0, but you need 1 minus 0.3. All right. Then you go to your table, and your table should have told you it's shrinking, shrinking, shrinking. And let's look at the 10th term. It says 24212. But you know what? If you had written that on the test, you'd be wrong. It's not 24212. It's actually 242121642. Do you get how easy that would be to just assume that what you saw on the chart was the right answer? But when you actually get into that cell, it tells you down here what the actual answer is. Now, it depends on what we have you round to. If we had you round to the 10th place, it wouldn't have mattered. Okay, but if they said, what's the exact answer? You need to be able to get into that cell and see the exact answer. Do you get what I mean? It's rounded. It's rounded to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places. Okay. All right. So Let's go to the next topic here. Here is a typical summary of, I don't know what growth and decay and percent of change are. We've been doing that this entire time, but if you're the person who likes to read it out, that's your slide. Okay, this is a typical question. See if you can answer all A, B, C, and D with the calculator. Now pause for a second while you give that a shot. Okay, so you should have said, this is obviously growing. Going from 20 to 24, it's growth. Now, the common ratio is where you take this divided by this. 24 divided by 20. That's 1 point what? 1.2? All right. What is that? That's the common ratio, 1.2. Could you write that as 1 plus 0.2? Sure, that'd be fine. Plus the percent of change, 20%. Do you notice? This will never be the same. The common ratio will not be the percent of change. At least I can't think of any situations. Maybe there's one case or something weird like that, but common ratio and the percent of change are a different concept. All right, next one. Write a recursive formula for the sequence U1 equals 20. UN equals UN minus 1. And then we got to times by something, and I said please put that in as a 1 plus something. 1 plus 0.2. Will I mark it wrong if you have it the other way? In some situations, I will. So please just put it in as a 1 plus something or a 1 minus something. I also know where we're going with this. So when we're all done, like by the end of next week, your equations are going to be really complicated, and they have to have a plus and a minus in them, or they won't work. Okay, so you need to get used to writing those as a 1 plus something or a 1 minus something. All right, and then who remembered n greater than or equal to 2? Raise your hand if you remembered that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 people are the only people get it right then. Because if you don't have the domain in there, it's going to cost you. Please try to remember putting in that domain. Now, what will be the value of the 23rd term? When you've typed it into your calculator, you'll go down to the 23rd term, and I'm guessing it's a decimal. Is it? Did you actually go into the cell itself and see the whole extent of the decimal? Or did you just write down what was on the screen? If you went into the cell itself, you might have a different answer. So I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, so I've got it in my calculator, and my table is now pulling up. I can just arrow down to the 20th term. It takes kind of a while. So if you ever want the fast way, let me show you a much faster way. Okay, now it's going to keep going. Great. Stop. Stop. Okay, the 20th term was 638.96, or was it really? Because if I go up here, remember me telling you this before? I didn't say to round it. So if you didn't write it all the way out, which was, oh, the 23rd term, my bad, 23rd. There you go. 1104.122878. Do you get how that's different? I know it's a small thing. I get that if this was rounding in the real world, the answer would be in 12 cents instead of the other answer that's black there, that would be 10 cents. It's only off by 2 cents. I get that. But you need to get that you might lose partial credit on a test for not having the exact full answer. So you got to go into the cell and write down that answer. Did anybody have it perfect? All right, that's about a third of you at least, maybe half. Okay. I'm guessing a lot of people lost because they just didn't go in the cell and they just wrote down this number right here. Okay, so that's the summary. That's what you have to do for tonight. Let's actually go to your homework and start it. It's not too tough. One second, please. Just hold on. All right. This is it. It says 1.2 growth and decay on it. I know it doesn't show at home, but it's called 1.2 growth and decay. Any questions about generally where to find this worksheet or whatever? Okay. Other questions? Yes. Oh, yes. The shortcut way to find the 23rd term. Thank you for asking. I did forget. I was going to show you. All right. So if you want the 23rd term, everybody get back to your calculator and hit second quit. It's right above mode. Quit. Quit out so you have a blank screen. Or clear it or whatever you need to do to get back to a blank screen. Okay? If you want U sub, we did 23 last time. You can do it from here. You don't even have to go to the table. U is right above the 7. Everybody type in a U. Sub is parentheses. 23. U sub 23 is, boom, there. And then if you do it that way, you won't get fooled by the rounding thing too. You know what I mean? So if you look in the chart in the wrong spot and you look at it's been rounded, you might write down the wrong answer. So that's a great way to find a term that's like way down the list. You don't have to arrow down like 5,000 times. All right, to make sure you actually caught that, would everybody please figure out what U sub 30 is? And then check with the person diagonal and show them what's on your screen. U sub 30. If anybody doesn't know, they'll find out right now that they don't know. You having trouble? Your equation? Yeah. Okay, I'll get you the equation back up. You need to get that thing typed in because you're going to use it all this whole assignment. Okay, what was it, by the way? How much was it? Thank you. 3956.27, blah, blah, blah. Okay, good. All right. I'm going to get back out of this. Now, what you should do if you're that kid who like, oh, my equation got messed up, ask to borrow the other person's calculator, and you can put it side by side with yours and just make your equation the same as theirs. So I don't want you to just stay lost if you get lost. You got to get caught back up and borrow their calculator to do it. It always comes down to the y equals screen. This screen, except I got to get, I'm in stat plot right now. There, that screen. If you get that screen right, everything else follows. Okay. So, if I wanted to get U sub 72, I go U, it's right above the 7, sub 72, end parentheses, enter. And there it is. Boom. You don't have to scroll down 72 times. You could also do that by resetting your table settings. And you could also do it by graphing. Do you want to tell me that method about graphing that you were talking about? I'm going to go to graph. I hit graph. Second, calculate a value. Let's say I say 23. All right, now the reason that happened, the window has to be big enough. So that's the only problem with that method. And I'm going to say go to the error, and it's like it's basically saying 23 is too big. So I'll try U sub like 5 or something that it will be able to handle. U sub 5. Enter, and there we go. Jumps to the answer, 41.472. So you could do it with graphing, you could do it with the table, you could do it with U sub. I think the fastest way is the U sub. So if you get out of this, and I want U sub 9, I just go U sub 9. Boom. There it is. Okay. So you've learned a lot. Really, today was a big day. You learned a lot about how you use the calculator for these. You learned the difference between the common ratio and the growth rate, or the decay rate. Those are the main things that you hopefully have learned today. And let's get the worksheet going now. And here it is. Find the common ratio for each one. I'm just going to make your life a little better because we don't have too much time for work today. So I would like you to all skip, listen please, this is important. Listen as you skip D on all the parts. Whenever you see a part D, you may skip it. There's one a little further down, etc. Okay, so that's cutting off about 1/4 of the problems at the beginning anyways. Okay, now let's do one. Let's find the common ratio. Ratio means a fraction, right? 150 over, just take these two and make it 150 over 100. Remember, it's always this one over that one. The second one is on top. Okay, and that comes out to 1.5. And that's it. Let's actually, I think I'll save you some time. If you go down to the next section, it's going to ask you to do the same exact problem and answer these questions. Growth or decay and percent change. If you look at this, it's going up, right? As it gets bigger and bigger, it's going up, so that's growth. And then the percent change, if you rewrite this as 1 plus 0.5, It'll be exactly equal to this, but it'll be better because then it shows you that the growth rate is that part, 0.5, or if you want to say 0.50, or if you want to say it as a percent, 50% change. So really, if you get used to taking your common ratios like this next one, I think it, well, what does it come out to? 29.375 divided by 73.4375. What'd you get? 0.4? Awesome. If you get used to right away rewriting that as not 1 plus 0.4, it'd be 1 minus 0.6. Remember, this has to be equal to each other. 1 minus 0.6 is 0.4. Now I can see the decay rate. So easy. It's right there. And that's what we need for this next problem down here. Okay. So there's some help getting started on your worksheet. I'm going to scroll this down to a graphing question. I want to help you with one of these. First of all, points. These and points don't, like, it's not so easy to see how you make a point out of these. But remember the sub-ends? Remember how I said that was important, that that's the little numbers on the bottom? So this is really a point. U1 equals 10 is really the point 1 comma 10. Do you get that? If I had the second term, it would be U sub 2. And it's 25% less. I can do that in my head. 25% less than 10 is 75, or 7.5. So use 2 is 7.5. What does that mean for a point? Come on, what's the point for that one? 2 comma 7.5. You know how that works? This is the n. That's the n. It's like the x. And then this other number is the y. It's like that. All right, so if I actually graph these, 1 comma 10 goes right. There's 20, and there's 10. 1 comma 10 goes right there. And then the next one was 2 comma 7.5, and that goes 2 comma 7.5. I don't know exactly where that is, but that's close enough. And you get the idea. This is going to be a straight line that just gets lower and lower and lower. The dots are going to line up. Yes? I didn't subtract by anything. Remember that this is a multiply by. See how it says a little dot in there? That's multiply by 0.75. What is 1 minus 0.25? It really comes down to that. You tell me, what's 1 minus 0.25? That's the exact same thing, right? So it's times by 0.75. So its decay rate is 25%. That's why we like to write it like this, is because then you can see the decay rate in it. But it is the same exact thing as this whole thing is 0.75. 0.75 is the common ratio. 0.25 or 25% is decay rate. All right, but if I were you, I'd be putting it in the calculator. Because if you get fast at putting these in the calculator is going to give you all the answers. Okay, so if I just put this puppy in the calculator, I'm going to be able to see what all my points are really quick. I look at the table if I want to get all the points for it. So I'm going to do that for you, just show you what I'm talking about. Mr. W, could you shut that door for us, please? This one is, it's starting at 10, and it's a decay rate of 25%. So if it starts at 10, that's my third line. I make this 10. And it's going down by 25%, so I go up in here. Notice how I never have to change my u sub n minus 1. You don't want to retype that all the time. Take you a long time. Minus 0.25. And there, I've got it in my calculator. So if I want to know what my points are, I just go to my table. And boom, there's my points, all the way down to the 18th term. So maybe I should reset my table to go to table settings, start on 1, or I could have just hit up a bunch of times, but I just wanted to show you that. You can do table settings, it's right above the window thing. And now I've got it in my calculator. My first point's 1 comma 10, my second point's 2 comma 7.5, my third point is 3 comma 5.625. The idea? You're going to have this calculator for your test, so No, nothing wrong with learning how to use it well. I want to put it back up on the screen here so that you can see if you're having trouble getting that to work. Maybe you were typing any one of those little things wrong in there, it would mess up your calculator. So, okay, that's all I have for the lesson for today.